Hey, Divine Ones, it's Jerome Braggs with another episode of my series, The Well-Being, where I share what I've learned about how to be well and live well as a soul having a human experience through my own experience of having two near-death experiences and a miraculous and mystical rite of passage that followed that. Today, I want to talk to you about something that's very important to me because it was really the root of my healing journey. And what I learned about it in my experience is very different than what we are talking about, how we're talking about it, especially in the West. There are very few people talking about it to the depth of what I learned. And I learned it again, one, because it was what I had to learn through my own healing journey. But it was also what I learned because of what I got intuitively through my channelings, through my channeling downloads, as well as what I was able to see when I began working with people when my intuitive gifts opened up. It was what I was literally able to see in their energy and vibration fields. So I'm going to share with you, and that is trauma and how trauma plays a huge role in what gets manifested for us. So if you've been watching these videos, I've talked a little bit about trauma in the previous videos, and I'm going to build upon what I've talked about in this one. And if you haven't watched those videos, please go back and watch those videos, but you'll still get a deeper understanding of what trauma is. And you'll understand in this video how it manifests your life and how when you heal it, what gets manifested in your life changes as well. So what I learned about what trauma actually is quite different than what we define it as in Western culture. So in our Western culture, what we typically define trauma is this an event that happens to us? It's some type of tragic or horrific event, like some type of physical or sexual abuse, some type of loss of limb, some type of loss, like loss of a loved one, or a loss of a house, or even a loss of a marriage or something like that. It's some type of injury to the body, like a loss of a limb, or you're in a terrible accident, or it could even be like a debilitating disease, right? And that event happens to us, and it changes our lives, and particularly it changes some type of way how we feel about ourselves. Now, the last portion of that it changes how we feel about ourselves, is the important part, because to our soul, to the divine aspect part of us, right? To the part of us, the higher self part of us, the inner being part of us, the God self part of us. Trauma is looked at a little differently. And to the soul, uh, trauma is not the event. And so and again, in our Western approach, what we mostly view trauma as is it's the event that happened, right? And so from the soul's perspective, trauma is not the event. What the trauma is, before I tell you what the trauma is, the root word of trauma is wound. It's a Greek word, and that word means wound. So, so what the wound is to the soul, what the real trauma is to the soul, is that how that event made you feel about yourself, and particularly that thing that happened to you, whether it was some massively horrific or tragic event, or whether it was a more commonplace event. That particular event disconnected you somehow from the truth of who you really are as a soul and the vibration of your soul, meaning how your soul feels and how that and what the usual trauma is. And so what the real trauma is to the soul is that event made you feel like there was something wrong with you somehow. It could be that you feel like there's something wrong with your body. There's something wrong with how you look. There's something wrong with your intellect. There's something wrong with um, how you show up in the world. There's something wrong with, your body, how it operates, whatever. You would start to believe that there's something wrong with you somehow, whatever it is, and that you're not safe in the world somehow, that this world is not a safe place to be. And that is trauma. It's a wound to the soul because it disconnects us from the truth that the soul knows, that there is nothing wrong with us ever, and that we are safe always and cosmically and eternally because we are one with everything, right? So that's what our soul actually knows. But the trauma disconnects us from that. When we come in as kids, we all come in with an understanding. We come in as babies. We come in with a knowing that we are a good thing to be in this world, that we are a good thing, right? And we are in this world, and that this world is a good thing to be inside of. We all come in with that basic understanding, unless, and this is a whole nother video, unless there was, our mothers went through some type of trauma when she was holding us, because that trauma gets transferred into the baby as well, into the baby in the womb, and it comes out with that kind of trauma. But that's another video I'll talk about down the road. But most of us come in with this basic understanding that we are a good thing in the world and that the world is a good thing to be inside of. And then something happens to us somehow in our childhood, somewhere in our childhood, usually before 5, but not always. Sometimes it's between like 10, before 10. But it's like, usually it's something that makes us feel like something is wrong with us somehow, and that we're not safe in the world somehow. And that's the real trauma to our soul, because it disconnects us from the truth of the soul and the vibration of the soul, and it disembodies the soul a bit. This is a big part. I've talked a lot about this, but it doesn't allow the fullness of our soul to land fully in our bodies at that moment. When we start to, when that trauma lands inside of us and it stays there, it disembodies parts of our soul. And that is catastrophic, because that affects our well-being, the well-being of our lives, and the wellness of our bodies. It literally leads to the dysfunctions and disorders in our lives, and it leads to diseases and illnesses in the body. Now, why this is trauma, why this is the wound, right? And when we talk about wound, it's literally the injury that happens to us. It's something that happened and that it affects us and it caused a wound, which is the trauma. And that wound gets infected and it bleeds out over into everything. And how it bleeds, right, is it's not just that it influences how we show up in the world, right? How we show up and behave in the world. So when we're traumatized, and all of us at some level get traumatized. Some of us, the trauma comes through a more horrific and tragic circumstance, like the ones I described in the first beginning of the video. And sometimes that trauma comes through less, horrific or tragic, but they still led to disconnection. They were still very painful for us. And so what happens is the trauma begins to, it doesn't just influence how we show up in the world, right? So when we're traumatized, when we believe that something is wrong with us and we believe that we're not safe in the world, right? So we're basically afraid. We're afraid of our being, that something is wrong with our being, and we're afraid of the world we move in, that it's not safe somehow, right? And so that begins to influence how we show up, right? So when we're traumatized, we never fully bring the fullness of who our authentic selves into the space of our lives, right? We'll reject an aspect of ourselves if we believe that aspect won't keep us safe, if we believe that that aspect may lead to us being attacked some way, either physically or emotionally or verbally, if some aspect of ourselves will lead to ridicule or abandonment, we will suppress that. We'll try to abandon that, or we'll hide aspects of ourselves, right? We'll hide it if we believe that that part of us will lead to us not having a feeling of safety, or if we believe that somehow that part of us people will make us feel more wrong or more not enough. We'll hide, suppress, abandon, or reject aspects of ourselves when we're traumatized, so we don't ever fully show up in the world. We don't show up as our authentic selves. We don't bring the fullness of our lives into the world. And that in and of itself is highly problematic. That's highly problematic because you never fully express the fullness of God on the planet like you plan to do, because that's who you are as a soul. You're a facet of God. And so when you do not do that, when you never show up authentically in a space, you never bring all of God onto the planet like God was intending to do through you. Right? So that's one way we don't show up. The other part is, our behaviors change, right? So And we do more defense-based behaviors. I'm going to do another video talking about what all the defensive behaviors and mechanisms are that we embody. But we'll try to protect ourselves some type of way. So a lot of times we'll try to be super perfect. This is where perfectionism comes in. Like when we're traumatized, we'll try to be super perfect. And what's underneath that perfectionism is a protection. If I'm perfect, then I won't get attacked. If I'm perfect, then I'll be safe. They'll leave me alone. If I'm perfect, they won't find out that something is wrong with me, right? Underneath that. But the problem with the perfectionism is we pursue this perfectionism to a degree that is highly detrimental to some area of our lives, either the well-being of our bodies, we overstress, we overwhelm. It may be the detriment of our relationships. We're workaholics and we don't really spend time feeling and expressing love with the people that we love and who love us. We will, be perfectionism. We may overwork at the gym, people who are gym holics, and they don't foster their own relationships and they don't foster their other dreams and they don't, do what actually other things that, really bring joy into their bodies. This is just one way, but this is not the big way. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about, that very few people are talking about trauma. So this is one way that trauma affects our lives negatively, is it affects how we show up in the world and how we behave in the world. Like, also, if you don't feel very safe in the world, you're always on guard. You never relax. You're always stressed in the body, and the body is tensed out. And a lot of this happens subconsciously. You don't even realize this is what's going on. These are just natural kind of defense mechanisms that happen when you're in fear, when you have fear-based, when you've been disconnected from the truth and the vibration of the soul. So again, the truth of the soul is what the soul knows about you. And the soul knows that nothing's wrong with you. You are always enough and worthy no matter what. And that you're always safe. That's the truth. That's a huge core piece of what the truth that the soul knows. How the soul feels is it always feels safe. It always feels enough. It always feels worthy. And we get disconnected from that vibration. So we don't hold that vibration, right? So vibration is basically how you feel. We don't hold that vibration in our bodies. And we don't hold that truth in our belief systems, right? So we're disconnected from who we really are. And that leads to dysfunction, disorder, and disease. And how that happens is this part. Because what trauma actually does is it rearranges your truth. And it makes you hold a different truth about yourself. And that truth is based in fear. It's a fear-based truth. And that truth, and it's a fear-based truth. So let me say that. One, there's a truth you hold about yourself, right? So what you're saying is true about you. So something about me is wrong. And somehow I'm not safe, right? It may be as a Black man, I'm not safe in the world. It may be as a woman, I'm not safe in a room full of men. It may be that, if I'm not thin, I'm not enough. If I don't have a certain amount of money, I'm not enough. If something's wrong with the way my mind, whatever it is, right? You have defined a truth about yourself that said, and at the core of that truth is something's wrong with me and I'm not enough. Here's the piece. The universe is responding to how you feel about yourself. That's what gets manifested. There's a lot of conversation about vision boards and affirmations and all of that. But what actually gets manifested as your life and inside of your life is the truth you hold about yourself and how you feel about yourself. So if you feel like something's wrong with you, then you have to continue to manifest evidence of that. You have to continue to manifest evidence, and evidence that is a direct reflection of the degree that you feel it. So if you really feel like something's wrong with you, then you are going to manifest. What has to be manifested as your life is experiences, relationships, events that prove to you that whatever you feel is wrong with you is wrong with you. You'll manifest experiences where people will notice it and they'll talk about it. You won't be able to attract, like if you feel like something's wrong with your body and it's not really attractive, because that was one of my traumas, right? One of my traumas was that as a thicker guy, I got teased a lot. And so as a kid, I got teased a lot for being a bigger kid. I wasn't, obese, but I was just bigger than the rest of the people in my peer group. And I used to get teased a lot. And so what happened was that traumatized me, and it made me feel like my body wasn't enough and something was deeply wrong with it and that it didn't deserve love. And so how that manifested in my life was no matter what type of person I attracted in my life, no matter what vision board I did for the person I wanted to have, my dream person, if they came, the relationship I had with them made me feel more like something was wrong with my body. No matter what, no matter how wonderful they were to me in the beginning, no matter how beautiful they said I was, no matter how perfect I said I was, eventually what that relationship began to mirror back to me my trauma. And it made me feel more like something was wrong with my body and that it wasn't enough and that it didn't deserve love. Right. And the same way, the safety, right? So, one of the traumas I experienced, and this goes for many people of color, especially Black peoples in America. We are a highly traumatized people. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility now to heal. But as a Black person, I experienced a lot of trauma around race and feeling like, and also socialization around it, that being Black wasn't a very safe thing to be in the world. And so I experienced a lot of that, manifested a lot of those experiences in my life where I was constantly being challenged in my safety around my color of my skin and how I looked as a Black male. And those things didn't change. It didn't matter what kind of book I read, what type of affirmation I was saying. It didn't matter until I did the work of healing my trauma. When I healed my trauma, the drama of those things began to release, and I don't have the drama anymore about those things, right? And the areas that I still have some trauma that I'm healing, I'm still manifesting from that. Remember the rule of the soul and how we manifest life is nothing gets manifested to you, like nothing happens to you, it happens through you. And the through you is how you feel about yourself. It's the truth that you have defined what is true about you. And trauma is one of the elements that helps define what you hold as true about you, right? And if what you hold is true about you and how you feel about yourself, right? And so you've got to, in order to change what gets manifested for you, you have to change what you're holding as true about you. And you have to change how you feel, how you emotionally feel in the body. You've got to really tune in and get honest to how you emotionally feel. How do you actually feel about yourself and about the world? And you've got to change that. You've got to get a different, healthier, more divine, you become a more soul embodied, right? Which is to embody more of the truth of the soul in your consciousness, that there's nothing wrong with you and that you are safe. And you've got to embody the vibration of the soul in your body, right? So that means getting more feeling of feeling safe in the body, of feeling enough in the body, lovable in the body, worthy in the body, right? And so that's the healing. That's the entire kind of principle behind it, is the principle behind healing. And I'm doing another video on what healing actually is, but it's really, how do you realign with the truth of your soul and your consciousness? And how do you get your personal truth in alignment with your soul's truth, right? And then how do you begin to embody the vibration of the soul in your body? How do you begin to feel more like your soul feels? Because until you do that, you cannot buck this. This is going to continue to manifest your life. And as a matter of fact, until we heal, the majority of our experiences get manifested through our traumas. This is why when people watch things like The Secret and they read the Law of Attraction books, and although they shared a lot of really great information in that, why they keep saying, I was able to do maybe a little bit, but that stuff doesn't work because my life is still a mess or I wasn't really able to change anything. It's because we rarely talk about this piece, especially in these fields. If we rarely talk about how it's not just the affirmations and the vision board and all of that. if you are if your life is, if you're continuing to experience dysfunction or disorder, there is a trauma held in your system that you have got to address and you've got to heal so that you can end the drama. How it manifests illness, and I'm going to do a whole, because that's what my whole journey was about learning how to heal the body. How it manifests illness is your system cannot stay traumatized. The body was not created to hold that type of energy, to hold fear, because that's what trauma is a fear. It was not created to hold fear in the body, in the vibration of the body. It was not created to be able to hold that. Your body was created by the soul to house the soul. And in order to house the soul, it has to house the soul's energy. It has to house the soul's vibration. And when we're traumatized, we move pieces of the soul's vibration out of our body. And the longer we stay in that space, it drains the wellness energy, because that's what the soul's energy is. This is the source of the wellness energy for the body. It drains the energy of that out of our bodies, and our bodies begin to get sick. And the body is a message. You hear me talk a lot about a message, that the illness and disease is not a punishment. It's a message. And it's really just a message that you're holding trauma and you're not embodying more of the vibration of your soul. And it's time to do that. Right. But that's exactly what's happening, you guys. That's all that's happening. But that's how trauma creates. That's how it creates in our lives. That's what it is. That's what it actually is to the soul. It's a disconnection from the truth of yourself. You're not disconnected to who you're no longer connected to who you really are. You're not connected to the truth of who you are, nor do you feel how the true you feels, and you're not expressing that in your life. And you begun to define yourselves by that trauma. We begin to define ourselves by that trauma. We hold it as a truth that something's wrong with us and something's not, and we're not safe somehow. And that affects how we show up in the world. It affects how we behave in the world, and it's kind of the default setting for how we manifest our lives. And remember, you are manifesting your life. You as a soul are completely manifesting your life. But this is how it happens. Your trauma that you're holding is manifesting more of your life than your desires and your dreams and your preferences. And if you really want to shift, it's not to do more vision boards. It's really to look at what is that trauma in there, heal that trauma, and then your whole life, the drama of your life will end. It will end when you do that. So there's many ways to heal trauma. You can work with someone like me. You can work with a therapist who's trained in trauma, healing trauma. There are many different ways. Some people have healed trauma through yoga and body-based things. There's tons of modalities out there. You will know which one you're called to and which one is right for you. But that's what trauma is, and that's how it affects our lives. And that's what's been my learning from my own journey. And I hope this helps you understand what's showing up in your life and what you need to do to get something different. You deserve it. You are worthy. There is nothing wrong with you, and you are safe. This world is where you belong, and it belongs to you. So much, much love, you guys. Until next time, bye.